Hello. Okay. I want to try making a brief video, and when I say brief, that usually means I talk for an hour or two, as opposed to 5 minutes. But I'm just going to get some thoughts out. This is an experiment. Like everything I do is an experiment. What I've thought about in the last hour or so is the idea of what. I'm not sure I can get this effectively out, but what this is going to be somewhat of a stream of consciousness. It's similar to if I got an idea and I wanted to get the idea out of my head as quickly as possible in a verbally dictated stream of consciousness to a voice recorder app on my phone, so that I could get it out as fast as I can without seeing the words if I typed it, because that has a reflective feedback loop that toxifies the output and it slows it down. Anyway, what I recently had a conversation this evening, this being currently now Wednesday, March 9th, 2022 at 1:52 a.m. I had this call until whatever it was. It was about, I had it until approximately, what time? I'm curious to know. That's why I'm actually writing this. It ended at 1:33, so 20 minutes ago. So I've been mulling the conversation. What I did was I read with a friend, I read the book of Romans, or at least a portion of it. It had me thinking about the nature of Christianity and Islam, and while I'm greatly inspired and I'm a huge fan of Jan Martel's Life of Pi, I don't go for the a singular person cooperatively following all three or multiple religions under the name of the religion, saying I'm a Christian I'm a Hindu Christian Buddhist. Yeah, you can say it, and it's not I'm not going to complain about anybody saying it, but it's when you get to being in that state of life, I mean, just saying that is more of a description for the aid of understanding for the other person. But when you actually self-reflect, a person who seeks a transcendent, something that's higher, somebody who quote unquote seeks God, who has that passion to find something out in life that's beyond, and it's absolutely not exclusively, mutually exclusive with the methodological scientific investigation, the scientific method and science and scientific thought. They are not mutually exclusive. They are actually very cooperative, unless you go into scientism and pure material reductionism, and that's when you get I would say more mutually exclusive nature. Because while I look at science as an art, it's a human endeavor, and it's an expressive art to seek the truth, which is actually idealistically the objective of true human experience towards the divine. That is the seeking of the truth. That is the ultimate truth. That would be the idea of what God should be, according to many faith traditions. Now, having said all that, I want to say that now this is going to, I'm not sure how I'm going to end this chat, but I will say that what I visualized after my call with a friend and discussing the book of Romans, and what I was interpreting from the book of Romans, which was what, chapters 6 through halfway through 8, was the nature of whether or not a person who seeks God, how let me put it the best way. Somebody who seeks God truthfully, deeply in their soul, their spirit, and can converse just as humbly and truthfully with a mystic, a Christian, a Muslim, and an atheist, when they are all seeking human bonds and truth and love. Although arguably, where there is an atheism, it's not anti-theism. It's more of the it's the atheist side of agnosticism, or it's just replacing the word agnostic with atheist. But it's more of the spirit of atheist, where when you get it. Anyway, the idea is that there is something about the nature of seeking God that allows a person to, reading the book of Romans, it's falling into the written law. And this is what I was discussing in this call, that there are Christians who will they will use the expression, "You're going to hell. You're not saved. You're going to hell." That is a pursuit of justice. It's using the law to condemn. It's the idea of being the judge, putting oneself in the seat of judgment, which is what Paul writes later or elsewhere in Romans, about taking the role of judge away from God and taking it on one's own self, which is sacrilege, or blasphemous. I don't know. So this is a quick brief. This is a quick supplemental. I wanted to interrupt myself for where the point of not judging is. It's not in Romans. It's not by Paul. It's actually by James. It is in James 4, verses 10 to 12. That's the context in BibleGateway.com. It's a warning against judging others. So, draw close to God. What is causing you to the fights and quarrels among you, etc. Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you, etc. Warning against judging others. Don't speak evil against each other, dear brothers and sisters. If you criticize and judge each other, then you are criticizing and judging God's law. But your job is to obey the law, not to judge whether it applies to you. God alone, who gave the law, is the judge. He alone has the power to save or to destroy. So what right do you have to judge your neighbor? So that's what I was referencing, as opposed to what might have been what I said was in Romans. But it's not right. So being able to discern is not the same necessarily, of course, as casting judgment or condemnation. And most especially not when you condemn, then enacting an execution, where, that's where you get Christians that claim to be acting for God doing physically violent, even murderous things all through history, individually or as groups. No good. That's using the idea of what Christianity is when it's honest and the true good seeking of God, converting it into a power and it's using it as, it's like using a hammer to it's like using a hammer to smack, like a hammer that's, used to smack nails. It's using a hammer that's used to smack nails to demolish a house. It's like smash, smash, smash. No, you use a proper tool for demolishing a house if that's your job, but you don't use the wrong tool. So the state, I believe it's a useful thing in the development of the West for the separation of church and state. There's probably a lot more things, and I think that according to what I've recently read and uploaded to YouTube, the Carl Jung's The Undiscovered Self, they're actually, the term state itself, the concept of the state and the concept of society as words and the meaning, they are still conceptual structures, and they can be, well, they don't have to exist, or they can exist in different manners entirely separate to what we currently have. Anyway, so dialing this back, dealing with the hammer and the idea of condemning, we don't need to. That's not something that is right for a Christian to do. Just being able to know that if you're following something that is destructive, you're going to end up with a destruction on your hands. If you judge somebody, if a person is part of a church and they condemn somebody else in the church, just without love, without actually the proper approach, which would be a corrective, unless the person is like a teacher or an instructor or somebody who has the more community authority for protecting the safety, security, integrity, psychological, etc. of the community, where there may be somebody that's actually intently malicious, Mephistophelian. You need to be able to deal with that according to written rules, which are also in the Bible. But you have to have proper discernment. You have to have that first. And that is where I was questioning whether or not a person who is truly saved should be described as being saved, or especially being described as not saved if you are not saved. If one person looks at another and says, "Oh, you haven't given your heart to Christ. You have not expressed it with your mouth," which is the Christian law of John 3:16, which I'll read the New Living Translation. Everybody who's heard it, it's on like billboards in the United States. But it just says John 3:16. What is John 3:16? I'll read, I think, the previous verse and one following. John 3. It's a good verse. It's poetic, and people know it culturally. Maybe or maybe not. John 3:13. No one has ever gone to heaven and returned, but the Son of Man has come down from heaven, and as Moses lifted up the bronze snake on a pole in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him will have eternal life. Then this is the John 3:16 line. For God loved the world so much that he gave his one and only Son, capital S, Son, title, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. God sent his Son into the world not to judge the world, but to save the world through him. There is no judgment against anyone who believes in him, but anyone who does not believe in him has already been judged for not believing in God's one and only Son. And the judgment is based on this fact: God's light came into the world, but people loved the darkness more than the light, for their actions were evil. All who do evil hate the light and refuse to go near it, for fear their sins will be exposed. But those who do what is right come to the light, so others can see what they are doing, that others can see that they are doing what God wants. So, a proper seeking of God is really like, and the acceptance of the Spirit of Jesus, the idea of the accepting Jesus as having died for a person's sins, that's a tough pill to swallow for people who aren't Christian. And the idea of what Muslims believe, people that follow the Quran, is that Jesus is a prophet, and after him was Muhammad, and whatever, that Muhammad was the last prophet, I guess. But I don't quote me on this, but I think that it's part of the Quran or Islam beliefs, looking at Jesus as a prophet, that Jesus did die, maybe also was raised, but then Muhammad came and he had his experience. Now, there's a lot of different things. If you're a Muslim mystic or Sufi or a Christian mystic, or just a mystic, whether you're any form of faith, or a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever you are, or I wouldn't say Confucianist. I think that's more closely aligned with Buddhism. I don't know. Anyway, I know Confucius writing a little bit, but I don't know Buddhist writing. But if you seek, let's see here. I'm going to get back and make this simple. It's been 10 minutes now. 13 minutes. A person may seek the truth, like I said a few moments ago, the scientific truth, and that is mutually cooperative with seeking God, if you're not reductionist and materialist, but you seek it everything symbolically and as an expressive art in humanity. And yeah, that's kind of what the written word is. And if a person is following their faith tradition, which they were raised in, honestly, and they learned it, they had an open heart. If they were truly seeking the truth, then there's something else. What I'm going to get to with this video is an analysis of the nature of a process that I just discovered, that's related to understanding, and it's not appropriate to say transformation, but that's the word that jumps out at me. Following a few different expressions, that another friend of mine has put forward from a quote he's had for several years and he repeatedly sent me, which I just love, and also as present that same expression and the background in Peterson's maps of meaning. You have the idea that the future, we are in time. I'm a temporal being, blah blah blah. It's a certain date right now. I'm recording this, digitized, it's going up as a file, and you're watching it now, whenever it is for you. And this is a temporal space that we're living in. Now, there are, if you study quantum mechanics and general and special relativity, you know that there are weirdnesses to the nature of time, the flow of time and space, and that space-time itself is Space-time itself is a field. I won't go into that, but the idea that it's a singular dimensional field that's made up of subdimensions. And yeah, like I say, I won't get into that. However, it's simple. You can say this, that the future is not a state. You do not get to the state despite the fact that you say that the future is this. In the future you may have more money. In the future you will be older. Well, obviously, but the point is that when you get to the future, you're going to be then in I'm not going to make a good argument for this. It's going to sound hokey or very obvious. When you get to the future, then you are in the present of that time. If you're growing a tree and you're waiting, or if you planted a seed in the ground for tomatoes and you're waiting until the summer whenever the harvest is of the tomato plant, you have to wait, and then the first time a tomato falls, that's your first harvest. Then you're in that future. That future time is the present then, when you're at that time in your frame of reference. However, the actual time, when you get there, what you're actually experiencing as a human is really a process. And I don't do a very good job of it, but the idea of the fact that you get to the future, and then there is no definite future unless you make a static event claim. But even as you do that, it's still just a symbolic thing in your memory. What is actually happening in your life is process. It's the idea of the future is not a singular state, but the future itself is a process. Meaning that's a claim. That's one claim in Maps of Meaning. It's a claim that's not just made by Peterson exclusively in Maps of Meaning. Other people have made the claim, but it's part of a foundational perspective on the nature of time and flow of time and the future, like what is yet to be written in the timeline of our history or world history, and also in what you could consider eternity. If you break the dimension of time, if you look at the entire dimension of time and escape it and include space-time as a flat singular field that you could just look at any time, anywhere, any place in that dimensional field, you can say that you are in eternity. You are in eternity, and all time is at the same time. Now, having said that, what I've just described is that the future is a process, and that's not my idea, like I say, but it's a very useful idea, and I would highly recommend people check out Maps of Meaning and find the section in it where it talks about future being a process. I believe that's in the subchapter about the Great Father, the wise king as an archetype, as opposed to the tyrannical king, or else it's in the Divine Son. I don't remember. Let's see, one of those two. Anyway, if you look at a process from a technical perspective in computer science, a process is generally thought to be either like it's easy to call it just a loop. It's basically a procedure that loops back. You have XYZ commands, or ABC, do this, do that, go, and there's classic loops like print hello, like a classic basic programming language from like 1980s. A basic programming language is line program would be like line 1 or line 10, print hello, line 20, go to 10. So then it's like print, then you get to the next command, goes back to the previous line 10, print hello, and then it's an infinite loop that just prints hello. That's a process, and you can have functions that are callable, that are named processes, and they're basically it's a straight through, and then it can be reused, and it essentially becomes a loop. There is a loop structure that it becomes the same thing as the Secret of the Golden Flower, or that the Ouroboros, that snake that eats its tail, the serpent of chaos, Tiamat, or I don't know what else creatures in time might, or mythology might be representing that. But it's a circle. It's a circle. Simple. Or it's a loop. No beginning, no end. Now, that is that you could say that that's a process, and yes, but what I want to say now, what the point of me getting into this video, and now 20 minutes it seems, or so, no, yes, just over 20 minutes, is that recently on, in this, like I say, this being March 2022, recently on social networks, I've seen it come up several times now, on Facebook and Twitter, this animation that somebody has released out there, and it's depicting, it's a visual, it's like a 3D modeled animation that's really crazy, and it's depicting quote unquote biblically accurate angels. Now one of these angels shows a bunch of looping loops, concentric circles and rings, and I believe, and they're covered in eyes, and it looks like a monster from a movie. I mean, if there's just a movie that had a monster that looked like that in it, but it doesn't look like a characteristic angel with wings that's bringing good news to Mary or the shepherds on Christmas Day that you might see in the nativity image or scene at Christmas time on church lawns, like a flying little robed beautiful character with a trumpet. No, these things are just covered in eyes. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to draw a comparison between the fact that they have multiple rings and the idea that a biblical angel might be symbolically or literally representative of intersecting processes. It can be maybe a representative of two processes, one which is temporal, which means it's a process that is inside of the field of space-time. It represents the transformation of the present into the future. But there are extra processes that are non-temporal. They are eternal processes. And the fact is that this breaks my mind. I have never got to this. This is a brand new idea in my readings of the Bible and all of everything that I've read. I've never come to this particular visualization and concept. I know how to interpret things super spatially, whatever that means. It means more than three-dimensionally. I can see cubes that are 4 and 5 dimensions. I know how to understand. I can see around walls. I can project the earth as flat. I'm not a flat earther, but I can actually steel man the flat earth theory, and I can basically steel man it from a obviously round earth perspective, such that I could defeat round earthers. Like it's all about curves. I mean, it's all about quantum perspective or sub-quantum perspective, and understanding fields and compound dimensions. And I'm not studied in this as far as a academic goes. I just intuit it, and I read as much as I can, and I just ask. I try to find the best questions, like Socrates, and like according to this Delphic oracle, trying to find the best questions to understand the truth, seeking God, seeking the truth, seeking wisdom. And so this is something I want to go into a little bit with some content, some visual stuff. So I'm going to actually change the size of this little screen that I have for myself. And where do I put it? Right down here, maybe. And I'm going to look at this, the biblical angels. All right, now how do I do it? I have to get rid of Chrome 2. There we go. Biblically accurate angels. There's a little character on the bottom of the screen, and it's like really scary looking. Like, look at this head, and there's that's the prophecy or the image of what God or the angel, the four-sided head, a man, a lion, a goat, or a cattle, and an eagle. But this is not the ringed God. I'm going to play it now. That thing is really, really, really crazy freaky looking. There's some lettering on it. This is very symbolic. Like I imagine that the imagery that where this came from in the original writing way back thousands of years ago, there's got to be like that's an archetypal image, right? Archetypal and being that it's got elements from consciousness and history and discussions, and it's probably, it's also nightmarish. Look at that. It's also got like what looks like paper mache pieces, like the wings or the feathers of the wings. If you consider these to be wings, they look like they're covered in newsprint with like stuff. Like there's like words written on them here and here. I don't know if my mouse is even showing up in this, but there's writing on the feathers of this. And all of the wings have eyes. How many wings are there? There's like 2 that go down, and then there's... well, it's mirrored, but there's one... okay, so there's one that goes down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, it looks like. Yep, 4 wings. Oh, and there was some birds flying in the background. 1, 2, 3, 4... 4 wings, or 3 wings are flapping on either side. So 6 wings are flapping, and 1 pair, 3 pairs are flapping, 1 pair is static up, and 1 pair is static down. Now if we go back to look at this other angelic being, there is actually 1 horizontal ring, and then inside it there's 1, 2, 3 other rings, and then a giant singular eye in the middle. I don't know if that's actually... no, it's not a ring. It's just, it looks like an eye with printing on it. So there's like a ring with eyes, and then there's 3 inside. And it's kind of looking like a gyroscope too. It could be said that they represent fields or dimension, or what do you call it? Compound. They can represent special types of dimensions. If you have any form of any three, if you have any 3 points in what is it, Cartesian or Euclidean space, any 3 points will define a plane. Or if you have a vector, which is defined as a normal, then you have a plane which equivalently, it basically represents, well, if you have a vector and it's a normal, then you get the plane which is perpendicular to the vector, where at its origin, which would be basically be where this eye is for each of these rings. You have like a center point around which all of these rings are centered, and where you have that point and these rings, that's a plane. It's a circle inside the loop, this ring. And then there's one here and one here and one here, and these are all this could mean that it's implying that there's multiple loops in reality. And I would like the animation, but I want to, after I've looked at it, I'm going to go to the reference in the book of Ezekiel in the Old Testament in this video, and then read that. So there's also, note, this thing here on the outside is just spinning, and this one here is just spinning, but this one here is rotating. The two that are inner, but not the two smallest, not the singular smallest ones. Oh, pardon me, I was almost right, but no, the second biggest ring is actually rotating. It's not just spinning around its axis, but it's actually rotating. That's interesting to note too. So I wonder if that's actually in the prophecy and the description in the Bible too. Okay, so that's kind of creepy, but really kind of interesting as well. So let's go back to the other. Oops. Okay, I believe it's in Ezekiel. Now it's pretty short. Okay. Actually, I'm going to read the introduction to Ezekiel. That might be interesting too, if it's worth something. Don't even know where in the Old Testament it is. If I can find it easy. Oh, it's after Lamentations. I remember that. Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel. I used to know all of the books, the names of the books of the Bible in the right order. That's what you get when you grow up in the Christian church and you follow, or you try to seek the truth. Ezekiel's prophecy is not easy to understand, but it is compelling. It's hard to lazily drift over spectacular creatures and fiery wheels, chapter 1. The valley of dry bones, chapter 37. And a temple that covers the whole land of Israel, chapters 40 to 48. Ezekiel was a priest whose service at the temple in Jerusalem should have begun at age 30, but when his time came, instead of serving in the glorious temple, he was living in Babylon, a worldwide center of idolatry, 700 miles away from Jerusalem's ruins. Instead of pursuing his priestly duties, Ezekiel was called by God to be a prophet. And it carries on, but I'll just jump into chapter 1. I've never read this in my life. Okay, a vision of living beings. Actually, you know what? I'm going to jump back to read where he might meeting God. Let's see here. God is holy. Blah, 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 blah. Ezekiel's fellow deportees and those remaining in Jerusalem believed the exile would end soon. False prophets encouraged this wrong belief. Chapter 13. They wrongly taught that since God loved Israel and Jerusalem, he would not allow the destruction of the nation to continue. Ezekiel had the unenviable position of explaining that it would not only continue, but that a much worse fate awaited Jerusalem. Chapters 8 to 11, before it got better. Chapters 38 to 33 to 48. Okay, let's read about these. I'm going to read it off the screen because then I'm looking at the hello. On July 31 of my 30th year, while I was with the Judean exiles beside the Kebar River in Babylon, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. This happened during the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity. The Lord gave this message to Ezekiel, son of Buzi, a priest, beside the Kebar River in the land of the Babylonians, and he felt the hand of the Lord take hold of him. As I looked, I saw a great storm coming from the north, driving before it a cloud that flashed with lightning and shone with brilliant light. There was fire inside this cloud, and in the middle of the fire glowed something like gleaming amber. From the center of the cloud came 4 living beings that looked human, except that each... There are 4 living beings, I'm going back. From the center of the cloud came 4 living beings that looked human, except that each had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and their feet had hooves like those of a calf, and shone like burnished bronze. Under each of their 4 wings, I could see human hands. So each of the 4 beings had 4 faces and 4 wings. There you go. The wings of each living being touched the wings of the beings beside it. Each one moved straight forward in any direction without turning around. Whoa. Each had a human face in the front, the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left side, and the face of an eagle at the back. That was the first one. And that was only one of them. This says that the vision shows 4, but that animation only showed 1, just as a visual illustration. Okay. Each had 2 pairs of outstretched wings. One pair stretched out to touch the wings of the living creature on either side of it, and the other part covering its body. They went in whatever direction the Spirit chose, and they moved straight forward in any direction without turning around. The living beings looked like bright coals of fire and brilliant torches, and lightning seemed to flash back and forth among them. And the living beings darted to and fro like flashes of lightning. That's impressive. As I looked at these beings, I saw 4 wheels touching the ground beside them. 4 wheels. As I looked at these beings, I saw 4 wheels touching the ground beside them, 1 wheel belonging to each. The wheels sparkled as if made of beryl. All 4 wheels looked alike and were made the same. Each wheel had a second wheel turning crosswise within it. The beings could move in any of the 4 directions they faced without turning as they moved. The rims of the 4 wheels were tall and frightening, and they were covered with eyes all around. When the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them. When they flew upward, the wheels went up too. The spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. So wherever the spirit went, the wheels and the living beings also went. The spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. So wherever the spirit went, the wheels and the living beings also went. When the beings moved, the wheels moved. When the beings stopped, the wheels stopped. When the beings flew upward, the wheels rose up, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. So it's repeating, but that's okay. Spread out above them was a surface like the sky, glittering like crystal. Beneath this surface, the wings of each living being stretched out to touch the other's wings, and each had 2 wings covering its body. As they flew, their wings sounded to me like the waves crashing against the shore, or like the voice of the Almighty, or like the shouting of a mighty army. When they stopped, they let down their wings. As soon as they stood with wings lowered, a voice spoke from beyond the crystal surface above them. Above this surface was something that looked like a throne made of blue lapis lazuli, and in this throne, high above, was a figure whose appearance resembled a man. From what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like gleaming amber, flickering like a fire. And from his waist down, he looked like a burning flame, shining with splendor. All around him was a glowing halo like a rainbow shining in the clouds on a rainy day. This is what the glory of the Lord looked like to me. When I saw it, I fell face down on the ground, and I heard someone's voice speaking to me. Yeah, that gives me the goosebumps just reading it. Biblically accurate angels. Let's go back. He's just basically saying a vision of living beings. Let's go back. Let's go into the future, or go to the next. Ezekiel's call and commission. The voice, "Stand up, son of man," said the voice. "I want to speak with you. I want to speak with you." The Spirit came into me as he spoke, and he set me on my feet. I listened carefully to his words. "Son of man," he said, "I am sending you to the nation of Israel, a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their ancestors have been rebelling against me to this very day. They are a stubborn and hard-hearted people. But I am sending you to say to them, 'This is what the sovereign Lord says,' and whether they listen or refuse to listen, for remember, they are rebels, at least they will know that they have a prophet among them. Son of man, do not fear them or their words. Don't be afraid, even though their threats surround you like nettles and briars and stinging scorpions. Do not be dismayed by their dark scowls, even though they are rebels. You must give them my messages whether they listen or not. But they won't listen, for they are completely rebellious. Son of man, listen to what I say to you. Do not join them in their rebellion. Open your mouth and eat what I give you." Then I looked and saw a hand reaching out to me. It held a scroll, which he unrolled, and I saw that both sides were covered with funeral songs, words of sorrow, and pronouncements of doom. The voice of Son of Man, Eat what I'm giving you. Eat the scroll. Okay, so he consumes the scroll and it gives him the words. Okay, so I'm not going to continue with reading this, and it gets long. But I do want to go back to chapter 1 and revisit the wheels. Now the spirit of the wheels, the spirit of the beings is in the wheels. Now the wheels have multiple rings. As I looked at these beings, I saw 4 wheels touching the ground beside them, one wheel belonging to each. The wheels sparkled as if made of beryl. All 4 wheels looked alike and were made the same. Each wheel had a second wheel turning clockwise within it. Each wheel had a second wheel turning clockwise. The beings could move in any of the 4 directions they faced without turning as they moved. The rims of the 4 wheels were tall and frightening, and they were covered with eyes all around. So there are 4 wheels, and there's a second wheel turning crosswise. I said clockwise by accident. Each wheel had a second wheel turning crosswise within it. Turning. Now that could mean anything. He says it's turning crosswise. It could be rotating or spinning. When the beings flew upward, the wheels rose upward. When the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them. Yes. Let's go back over and review that. I've just had to adjust this well, I've just adjusted the size of this, but really I need to show this. Okay, so that's the being. There's just one of them. There's the pair of wings, and then there's another one. There's another pair of wings that's flying, and the body is covered. Oh, but then I can see there are wings right in here. Those are actually wings too, covering its body. But then again, if you see there are actually 4 beings, if each of these is being, which it is, there's the eagle in back, the ox, the lion, and the person, and there's a pair of wings that are lower and a pair of wings that are upper. So I'm not sure, this is like there's 4 beings, each being. So now there's actually no central eye in this, but they are covered in with eyes, and there's a second wheel, and it's turning crosswise. Unless, of course, what I'm saying is wrong, and I'm going to collapse this from being full screen. Go look at the biblically accurate 6 wings. The appearance of a structure of wheels. All 4 rims were full of eyes around. 118. The rims of the 4 wheels were tall and frightening, and they were covered with eyes all around. As I saw a great storm coming from the north, it was dry. Let's see here. From the center of the cloud came 4 living beings that looked human, except each had 4 faces and 4 wings. Each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. And the 4 wings, so each of them, their legs were straight and their feet had hooves. Each of the 4 living beings had 4 faces and 4 wings. Each of the, so I don't know what this is, unless it was from, had 6 wings, Revelation 4:8. Could just go and look that up. Worship in heaven in the book of Revelation. Then as I looked, I saw a door open in heaven. I saw a door standing open in heaven, and the same voice as I had heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. The voice said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this." And instantly I was in the Spirit, and I saw a throne in heaven, and someone sitting on it. The one sitting on the throne was as brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian, and the glow of an emerald circled his throne like a rainbow. 24 thrones surrounded him, and 24 elders sat on them. They were all clothed in white and had gold crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and the rumble of thunder. And in front of the throne were 7 torches and burning flames. This is the 7-fold Spirit of God. In front of the throne was a shiny sea of glass, sparkling like crystal. Very nice. In the center and around the throne were 4 living beings. In the center and around the throne were 4 living beings. Each covered their eyes, front and back. The first of these was the living beings was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a human face, and the fourth was like an eagle in flight. So these are the 4 living beings, and each had, the first of these living beings was like a lion, the second was like an ox, third was a human, the fourth was like an eagle. So these are 4 individual beings that each only have one face. Each of these living beings had 6 wings, and their wings were covered all over with eyes inside and out. Day after day and night after night they kept saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God, the Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come." Yeah, then it continues. Whenever the living beings give glory and honor and thanks to the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down and worship the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever. And they lay their crowns before the throne and say, "You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and power, honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased." Now, I was interested to connect the idea of multiple dimensions in a process, the shape of a process as symbolized by, a circle, and then multiple circles. I find it interesting that the Revelation 4 does not mention the wheels. It does mention each 4 living beings, each one being like a single animal. This might have been, I wonder if this has been, no. I'm not going to second guess this. It is as I've just read it. I might train, just curious to look at King James Version. Because it always sounds kind of oldish and stylish and poetic. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne there were 4 beasts, full of eyes before and behind. And the first beast was like a lion, the second beast like a calf, the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. And the 4 beasts had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. Now, I'm going to jump back to Ezekiel 1. Change it to King James Version. And they went forward and straight. The living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. I love that. Now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth. Behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. With his 4 faces. Behold, one wheel by the living creatures with his 4 faces. The living creatures with his 4 faces. Now that sounds more like it's the end of 15 with his 4 faces might be a single hymn. 15. Let's go back to the New Living Translation, chapter 15. As I looked at these beings, I saw 4 wheels touching the ground beside them, 1 wheel belonging to each. That does not include the term his. 4 faces. Now, as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels, I asked that because I wonder if that loops them all together into a singular being. His. Let's do a search for the word his in this. No. Out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. They had the likeness of a man. They had the likeness of 4 living creatures. They had the likeness of a man. And each one had 4 faces. Each one had 4 faces. Each one had 4 faces. I have to read that because that makes them separated. Again, it's in the King James and the New Living Translation. Each one's was separate, and each single entity had 4 faces, and everyone had 4 wings. So in Revelation they got upgraded to 6 wings, but they still had 4 faces, and in Revelation there was only just the 1 as opposed to 4. There was 4 rather, and each of them only had 1 face. But here they have, it's 4 creatures, and each of them has 4 faces, and each of them has 4 wings, 2 down and 2 up. But it was covering their bodies, and their feet were straight, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. And they had their hands, and they had the hands of a man under their wings, on the 4 sides. On the 4 sides. Wait a minute. And they had the hands of a man under their 4 wings on the 4 sides. Wait a minute. So if okay. So each being has 4 wings, but it also has 4 faces. And if you have 4 faces, then it's fair to say you have 1 wing per face. Times 4. They had the hands of a man under their wings on their four sides, and they four had their faces and their wings. Yeah. The wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. They went every one straight forward. Thus were their faces. Verse 11. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. And their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings for every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies. Oh, I can visualize that really well now. They form a square. It's just 4 of them, and they're touching each other, and they form a square, and then the other 2 of the 4 each is covering their bodies. And they went, okay, then it repeats. Okay, so we've covered, in this video, I've covered oh, I've been looking at the wrong image in this. Sorry about that. I jumped to the wrong screen. Okay, they had the likeness of a man. Every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. Their feet were straight, hands of a man under the wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another, and they turned not when they went. They went every one straight forward. So every direction they face is forward. Although I don't know what that means. Does it mean that each of them has... I wonder if that means that each of them has an omnidirecting face, maybe meaning that it's a face that faces in all directions, and that all of the 4 faces are actually stacked. That would actually make them look like rings. I wonder then if we looked at where all degrees of each ring is the face. That would be the eyes, except that no, that is a separate construct, and each of the faces is clearly described. I was steel manning that there. As for the likeness of their faces, they had 4 had the face of a man, the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. Their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings for every one were joined to another, and covered their bodies. And 2 covered their bodies. Okay, so I've read this several times. I'm going to go back to the original video and just do a recap and then summarize what my thoughts are. I'm gonna have to find whoever did this. Okay, so there's like 4 creatures, and they're all, so 4 of them are they might be attached, but I don't see that. And now there's actually wheels. There's no central eye in the writing, but there are 2 concentric circles, and then now this is 6 flapping wings. I don't see the faces in here. I think that this description that these are following may be from another version of the Bible. There's fire though, so that's nice. Nice touch. Now, instead of having 4 wheels, so like you could say that these are the 4 wheels of the being. And it just threw that eye in there as a stylish thing, but and that's because it's all over all of these. But that is not that central one, and the inner two are not part of the description of these rings, unless of course the description is elaborated elsewhere, maybe in the Book of Enoch. And so I'm not going to say any more than that it's not supposed to be there. Like I say, that the description of a ring of wheels might be elsewhere. But it's turning crosswise. Yep. So that's pretty amazing. Now, so the idea is that the loop and its eyes could be considered the nature of it could be said that the eyes are part of the process, part of the nature of the evolving nature of time, but the eye it's almost like a palantir in an infinite palantir in Tolkien's Silmarillion and Lord of the Rings, where you have a seeing stone. It's something that you can look in if you know how to use it, and then the other seeing stones, if you have those other seeing stones, you can see out those. So from where you are, you can see out all of them if you knew where all of them were. So each of these eyes could be just they could be representing the same eye, but at different points in time and space, and it's always visible, like a panopticon, an eternal panopticon. But the fact is that this is where I made this video, that there is a second wheel, there's a second ring that is not temporal, and it allows for what it allows for is what I'm going to be mulling now for the next little while. It's a process that's non-temporal. It's an eternal. It's a process that uses a higher dimensional something. It includes some other thing in eternity. So it's not time based, but it could be if you break down time as just another static spatial dimension. If you look at it from a compound dimensional perspective, like space-time, you should be able to include some other dimension in eternity, or just a higher order perspective that includes other dimensions outside of I don't even know what that would be, but that's basically what this is. That's what this is depicting, I would propose. It's an access to, I wonder if one could say that it's an access to knowledge. If we're going to break it down and just interpret what it is. It's access to truth. Eyes all around, so it can see any direction. And this is wait a minute. Doesn't Marduk have eyes all the way around his head? I wonder if there's more details of these angels in the Enuma Elish, which I haven't read. Anyway, this is just an interesting thing. I wanted to make this video looking at these rings, thinking about them, considering the biblical writings and the prophecy, and then connecting them with some idea that I had. Okay, so I want to add in a note, another point about the image of those rings, the wheels for the wheeled angel, if you will, or the wheels anyway, whether you want to call them part of the creature or just separate wheels, is very reminiscent of the visual from the Game of Thrones entry opening for those. I believe that's supposed to be the sun. So I wanted to play that quickly without sound. So yeah, there's the center eye and a bunch of concentric rings that are rotating separate. And then it's blinking right there. You could see it flash. So part of it is being, I wonder if you say that this is partly zoomed in and it's the camera is still way back. I mean, it looks like it's actually moving. No, see, it isn't it's still inside. It was only briefly inside when it looked like it was zooming in and like getting closer. There's the sun up here in the top right there, and now there it is again. And if I back it up a bit, you can see it up in the sky, and that's like, and now we have more rings. How many rings are there? There's the center ring, then one. Oh, I can't tell if that's actually an inner ring. It looks like it. But then there's another 1, 2. So there's 1, 2, 3 inner rings followed by the. Oh, but there's one right there as well. So that's actually 4. 4 inner rings, not 3. So there's, or wait a minute. 1, 2, 3. Oh no, but then there's 2 right there. So that's 5. It's not exactly the same. It's got 5, but it could have been that the design in this original show intro for that sun was inspired by the wheels in the book of Ezekiel, possibly. I don't know. Or maybe I would also, or preferably, argue that the image in the animation was inspired by this video, because there are more than 2 rings. The wheel in this has 5 pieces, and the one in that has 4. And it blinks. See that? That's so strange. Why does it blink right there? It looks like it blinks. Anyway, let's take a look at the biblically accurate angels. Make sure that I'll just cut back to the original video. So that's the end of this video, or these thoughts. Thank you.